All right, let's get right into it. You've probably seen the headlines about Venezuela and figured, okay, that story's over. But what if I told you it's actually just the opening chapter of a much, much bigger story? This isn't just about one country's crisis. It's a key battle in a massive global economic war.
And this quote from our source material really just nails it. The news cameras have packed up and gone home, but the real strategic conflict, that's just getting warmed up. So we're going to peel back the layers here, look past the political speeches, and get to the deep economic game being played.
Because at the end of the day, this was never really about a single person or a specific political party. It's a geopolitical tug-of-war for something much bigger: resources, control of critical trade routes, and really for economic dominance in the entire Western Hemisphere.
To really get what's happening in Venezuela, you have to zoom out and look at the whole continent, because South America has quietly become a new economic battlefield, mainly between two heavyweights, the United States and a very rapidly expanding China.
And just look at this number, $518 billion. That's the forecast for trade between China and Latin America this year alone. I mean, that's over $500 billion. This isn't some minor trend. It's a massive economic realignment that's been in the works for 20 years.
And this chart, wow, it tells the story so clearly. China isn't just a player anymore. It's the #1 trading partner for huge economies like Brazil, Peru, and Chile. It has actually surpassed the United States in what has historically been America's own backyard.
And we're not just talking about buying soybeans and selling phones. This is about deep, physical infrastructure. You've got 22 nations signing up for China's huge Belt and Road project. China is operating major ports, and this new port of Chancay in Peru, it's literally designed to create a supply chain from South America to Asia that cuts the U.S. out of the loop completely.
So when you see all that, the U.S. action in Venezuela starts to look less like an isolated event and more like a direct reaction. It's a powerful message being sent to the whole hemisphere, basically saying, hey, there are consequences for drifting too far into Beijing's orbit.
And this brings us to the real heart of the matter. It's not about the amount of oil Venezuela is pumping right now, because frankly, it's not that much. It's about the currency that oil is sold in. And this is where things get really interesting.
Okay, so for the last 50 years, the world economy has run on something called the petrodollar system. It's simple. If you want to buy oil on the global market, you have to buy it with US dollars first. This creates a massive, constant demand for dollars, which is what gives the US so much financial power and lets it borrow money so cheaply.
So here is the multi-trillion-dollar question. Venezuela is sitting on 300 billion barrels of oil. That is the largest proven reserve on planet Earth. What happens if they decide to just opt out? What if they start selling all that oil for, let's say, Chinese yuan instead of US dollars?
Well, that's the nightmare scenario, the potential chain reaction. Demand for dollars drops, the dollar's value starts to slide, and suddenly the cost for the U.S. to pay the interest on its massive national debt could explode. So the threat was never about the oil itself. It was about Venezuela setting a precedent that could start to unravel this entire financial system.
So, faced with that kind of threat, how do you respond? Well, this wasn't just a simple military operation. It was a very sophisticated, two-pronged economic warfare strategy.
And you can really see the division of labor here. You had the U.S. bringing the military pressure, the hard power, the threat of force, and at the same time, you had Europe bringing the financial squeeze, freezing assets, blocking bank transfers, making it impossible to insure oil tankers. It's a classic pincer movement, designed to make it economically impossible to resist.
And the economic motive? Well, let's just say it wasn't exactly a secret. Former President Trump was incredibly blunt about it, basically saying U.S. companies would go in and take the oil as reimbursement.
But then, literally the next day, you get a totally different message from Marco Rubio, who insisted, no, this is about democracy and good governance. We don't even need their oil.
So, which is it? The contradiction between those two statements actually points to the real goal. It might not be about the U.S. needing to use the oil right now, but it's absolutely about making sure those 300 billion barrels stay priced and sold in U.S. dollars, locking them firmly inside the American financial system and, just as importantly, away from China's.
And that leads us to where we are today, which is a future that is completely up in the air. The main operation might be over, but the country is left in a state of paralysis because nobody knows who is actually in charge. I mean, this is the fundamental question that stops everything dead in its tracks. Is it the old government, the US-backed opposition, some new hybrid authority? As long as there's no clear answer,
No major company is going to risk billions in investment, and the country can't even begin to recover.
The source material basically lays out 3 ways this could go. Path 1 is the best case, a slow, messy, but ultimately controlled transition. Path 2 is the nightmare scenario. The country breaks apart into warring factions, just like we saw in Iraq and Libya. And then there's a third, very real possibility. Venezuela becomes a long-term proxy war, with China bankrolling factions to resist U.S. influence for years to come.
Right now, if you look at the energy markets, they're pricing in that happy ending. They're betting that everything will get sorted out and U.S. companies will be in there rebuilding soon. But history has taught us a very hard lesson. Toppling a government is one thing. Building a stable, functional nation from the ashes is something else entirely.
So if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's that the quiet economic competition for South America is no longer quiet. The fight over Venezuela has dragged it out of the back rooms and put it right on the world stage for everyone to see.
And that leaves us with one final, sobering question. Everyone is hoping for that best-case scenario, but what if it doesn't work? What if the country fractures? What if this becomes a forever war fought with dollars and yuan instead of bullets? The answer to that question won't just decide the fate of 30 million Venezuelans. It could very well define the global balance of power for the next generation.